Today, I will review the Intake Beneficiary application, which, effective October 18, 2020, is one of the General Land Office's required documents for voluntary buyout or acquisition programs. The Intake Beneficiary application can be found on the Texas General Land Office website at recovery.texas.gov. To locate the document, click on the Info for Local Governments link at the top of the page. Then scroll over Resources in the navigation header, and under the Program subhead, click on the Buyout and Acquisitions link. This page has many of the required documents and resources for the buyout and acquisition programs. Scroll down to the left side checklist section and click on the Intake Beneficiary application. Once you click on the link, your computer will download the fillable document. Please note, you will need Microsoft Word to view and edit the document. Subrecipients should give the Intake Beneficiary application to all applicants of voluntary buyout and acquisition programs. Subrecipients will use the application to determine applicant eligibility for the program and to gather required data and backup documentation. Some applicants may need additional assistance and counseling to complete the application, and it's the subrecipient's responsibility to ensure they receive the assistance they need to complete the form. Once the applicant has received the form, it's their responsibility to fill in all sections of the form. Applicants can't leave spaces blank. All spaces must be completed or have an NA for not applicable. For this video, I'll use an example of a fictional applicant and location to explain the form. The first section of the Intake Beneficiary application is for applicant information. The applicant should be the head of household, named on the title for the property requesting buyout or acquisition, and the owner of both the land and the home in question. First, the applicant will input their full name. In this video example, our fictional applicant is named Robert Alejandro Smith Rodriguez. He has 2 last names. On the next line, the applicant will include all name variations. The applicant should enter their name exactly the same on all the forms. Any variations that may appear on the documents should be noted here. Robert has several name variations. On some documents, his name was written with a hyphen, and on other documents, his last name was spelled incorrectly, and he often goes by Bobby instead of Robert. All name variations should be included on this line to avoid confusion. Next, the applicant will need to include their full Social Security number. Subrecipients must protect all personally identifiable information, such as can be found in this form and others in the buyout and acquisition program. Subrecipients should create and follow policies and procedures to guide the handling and storage of documents with personally identifying information. The applicant will then enter the street address where they currently reside. Note, the current address may differ from the address for which the applicant is seeking a buyout or acquisition, and that is fine. There is a space later in the form to fill out the buyout property's address. In this section, Section 1, the applicant should enter the address where they currently reside and the county in which the address is located. Next, the applicant will fill out their email address. In this example, Bobby doesn't have an email address, so he'll put an NA. Remember, applicants can't leave any fields blank. The applicant will then include their home and cell phone numbers. If the applicant only has one phone number, they should enter that number in both locations. On the following row, the applicant will provide the name and contact information of their nearest relative who does not already appear on the application as a co-applicant or household member. The relative should be 18 years or older. For example, it could be parents, siblings, children, cousins, etc. Bobby's nearest relative is his brother, James Paul Smith Rodriguez, who lives next door at 124 Candy Cane Lane. The last few lines in Section 1 are for the mailing address if it's different from the home address, such as a P.O. box. If it is the same address, the applicant can write N.A., so in our example, Bobby wrote N.A. Section 2 of the intake beneficiary form is for co-applicants, which are defined as anyone else with interest in the property. Please note, if there is an additional person on the title other than the applicant, they will need to be co-applicants and participate in the program. If the title report shows more people on the title than just the applicant and co-applicant, those representatives will need to complete applications. Any title issues with additional owners that are not co-applicants must be cleared prior to the property being eligible for buyout or acquisition. If there are no co-applicants, please put NA in the blanks and proceed to Section 3. The questions in Section 2 are the same as the questions in Section 1, but they will be filled out by the co-applicant. In our example, Bobby's co-applicant is his wife, Susan Shirley Rodriguez, and as you can see, she has filled out the requested information. Section 3 is where the applicant provides information to determine their eligibility for the program. In the first question, the applicant should list all presidentially declared disasters that have affected the residents. For example, Bobby's house flooded in both the 2016 floods and Hurricane Harvey, so both disasters were listed. The next question is, were you the owner of the residence on the date of the disaster event? An owner is someone who holds rights to the residence. At the time of the disaster mentioned above, did the applicant have rights over the residence? Bobby has owned his house since 1980, so yes, he was the owner during both the 2016 floods and Hurricane Harvey. Was the damaged property the homeowner's primary residence on the date of the disaster event? A primary residence is defined as the home where the applicant primarily lives. A person can only have one primary residence. Additional residences are considered secondary residences or rental homes. Any home that is not the primary residence of the owner, a tenant, or any occupant at the time of the storm or at the time of application for assistance is considered a secondary home, and the answer to this question would be no. Secondary residences are not eligible for incentives. For this question, Bobby will answer whether he was primarily living in the buyout property at the time of the storm. If Bobby was primarily living at the property in question, but had to evacuate due to the disaster, the answer to this question would still be yes, because it was his primary residence prior to evacuation. Documentation demonstrating primary residency is required for submission with the application. Bobby and his family were living solely at the residence on the date of the event. Was the damaged property a rental property on the date of the disaster event? A rental property is any house that is rented out at any time during the year. It could be a vacation home or a permanent rental. If the house is a partial rental and at the time of the storm had tenants in one part of the home and the homeowner lived in another part of the home, the applicant would also check yes for this question. For Bobby, his answer was no, because he did not rent out his residence. Was the damaged property covered under homeowner's insurance? At the time of the disaster, did the homeowner have insurance on the home, regardless of whether insurance paid for any damages? Then, the applicant should include the name of the insurance company and policy number at the date of the disaster. Was the damaged property covered under flood insurance? Meaning, did the homeowner have flood insurance at the time of the storm? The applicant will list the name of the flood insurance and policy number. Buyout homes that are in special flood hazard areas are required to have had flood insurance at the time of the storm. Did the applicant apply with FEMA for repair assistance for structural damage to the home? Has the applicant ever received any other assistance for the repair or rehabilitation of their home? Bobby did register with FEMA and received repair assistance, so he marked yes. Was the residence occupied full-time at the time of the disaster by a renter? Meaning, was there a tenant living full-time at the residence during the disaster? Was the residence occupied full-time at the time of the disaster by a homeowner? Was the residence occupied full-time at the time of the disaster by a renter and a homeowner? Section 4 is where the applicant lists all household compositions and characteristics. Under Member Name, all current members of the household should be listed regardless of age or relationship to the head of household. Also, applicants should list anyone else that they expect to move into the household within the next 12 months. The head of household should be the first row of household members in Section 4. The head of household is typically the applicant who has been designated by the family as the head for purposes of determining eligibility. The head of household ensures that the family fulfills all its responsibilities under the program, alone or in conjunction with a co-applicant or co-head. The applicant will need to include the marital status of the head of household, date of birth, and gender. The other household members don't have to include marital status, but they do need to include their date of birth, gender, and relationship to the head of household, such as spouse, sibling, cousin, grandparent, or roommate. After filling in information for all members of the household, total the number of household members. Section 5 is where the applicant provides household income information. Subrecipients will verify income information using the previous year's tax return and the GLO's AGI and AMI verification tool. Tax returns must be submitted for all occupants over 18 years of age. The first question is, did you file tax returns in the last 2 previous years? Meaning the applicant should answer if all household members over the age of 18 filed taxes at least once within the last 2 years. If no, the applicant will need to submit additional income documentation, which will include the last 3 months of pay stubs or a signed statement from the employer stating the applicant's wage and frequency of payment. If yes, what was your adjusted gross income reported on the most recent tax return? To find the adjusted gross income, the applicant will need to complete the AGI and AMI verification tool. I will go over how to complete this tool in a separate training video. Once filled out, the applicant will take the total adjusted gross income from cell P60, which in our example is $35,800. And then they will input it into the application. Section 6 is where the applicant provides direct beneficiary data for the household. On the top of this section, there are different codes for ethnicity, race, and special needs. Ethnicity codes are either A or B codes. A is a household member with Hispanic ethnicity. Hispanic ethnicity can be a person of descent or ethnicity of Spanish culture or origin, regardless of race. Or B, if an applicant or household member does not consider themselves of Hispanic ethnicity, they will choose B, not Hispanic. There are 11 race codes to choose from codes titled A through K. Only choose one code. The second column has race codes for some common mixed races such as American Indian and White, Asian and White, Black and White, etc. If you are multiracial but don't fall into one of those categories, please check J, Other, Multiracial. K is if your race is unknown. There are 8 special needs codes titled A through H. The applicant should select all that apply for each household member. Elderly is defined as a household member who is over the age of 62. A person with disabilities is a person who has a physical or mental impairment which substantially limits one or more major life activities, a record of such impairment, or being regarded as having such an impairment. HUD defines a colonia as rural communities within the U.S.-Mexico border region that lack adequate water, sewer, or decent housing, or a combination of all three. A colonia resident is someone whose primary residence is in a colonia. Homeless is individuals and families who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. A migrant farm worker is an individual who is required to be absent from a permanent place of residence for the purpose of seeking employment in agricultural work. A public housing resident is an individual who lives in a low-income rental property owned by a government authority. A veteran is a former member of the Armed Forces of the United States who served on active duty and was discharged under conditions which were other than dishonorable. A wounded warrior is a military service member or veteran who incurred a physical or mental injury, illness, or wound coincident to their military service on or after September 11, 2001. The applicant should fill in the table according to the demographic and special needs information for the household. The head of household is HOH, which will be placed in the first row. All other household members should be placed below. You can see how Bobby completed the ethnicity, race, and special needs codes for his family. Section 7 is where the applicant provides information on the damaged residence that the homeowner is applying to be bought out or acquired. First, the applicant should check the type of structure. A single-family home is designed to be a single-unit family residence that has its own private and direct entrance with only one kitchen and one set of utilities. A manufactured housing unit, also known as an MHU or mobile home, is a housing structure, transportable in one or more sections, which in the traveling mode is 8 body feet or more in width, or 40 body feet or more in length, or when erected on site is at least 320 square feet, and which is built on a permanent chassis and is designed to be used as a dwelling with or without a permanent foundation when connected to the required utilities. Modular home is a home that was built in sections in a factory to meet state, local, or regional building codes. Once assembled, the modular unit becomes permanently fixed to one site. A townhome, also known as a townhouse, is a tall, single-family home that has a small footprint but multiple floors. Townhomes tend to be connected to one another in a row. Choose Other for any other property structure type. Please write in the structure type. The applicant will then type in the address of the damaged residence. The next row is for the tax parcel number, which can be found on the applicant's tax bill or on the tax assessor's website. The date of construction is the estimated date that the home was built. If only the year is known, that is acceptable. Date you acquired the title to the property? That is the date that the applicant bought the property or received interest in the property. In this row, the applicant should put the exact date. Total square footage of all floors of the house. If the applicant is unaware how many square feet their home has, they can go to har.com and search the property address to find the square footage of the home. Number of stories the house has above ground. Next, the applicant should answer yes, no, or NA to the following questions in the section. Is this currently a rental property? A rental property is any house that is rented out at any time during the year. It could be a vacation home or a permanent rental. If the house is a partial rental and has tenants in one part of the home and the homeowner lives in another part of the home, the applicant would check yes for this question, as it is still considered a rental. If the property is a rental property but currently has no tenants, it should still be checked as yes. Bobby and his family are living in the residence and have had no tenants during the year, nor do they plan to, so Bobby checked no. As subrecipients review these applications, if an applicant states that the property is a rental, then the subrecipient should immediately send a General Information Notice, also known as a GIN notice, to the property and follow all URA regulations. Are you currently living at the damaged residence? The applicant will check yes if they are living at the damaged residence or no if they are living elsewhere. If they are living elsewhere, the address in Section 1 should be different from the address that was just written in Section 7. Is the property currently accessible? Subrecipients and their vendors may need to access the property during the program. If factors like entry gates or access codes impede entrance to the property, then the answer would be no, indicating that the property is not currently accessible. Is the property in a floodplain? If any portion of the lot touches the floodplain, the applicant should check yes. If you are seeking assistance for a manufactured housing unit, do you own the land? If the applicant does not own the land, then the house cannot be bought out or acquired. Remember, Bobby's applying for a single-family residence, not a mobile home, so he put NA. Does the manufactured housing unit have a valid statement of ownership filed with the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs? Statements of ownership records can be found or filed at the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs Manufactured Housing Division website at www.tx.us/mh/index.htm. For a manufactured home to be eligible, it must have a statement of ownership and the property must be selected as real property on the statement of ownership. However, please note that Texas law states that as September 1st, 2003, all titles became statements of ownership. The program will accept titles that identify the property as real property as well. Are there other names on the deed for the damaged property? All additional names on the deed will need to participate in the program or be cleared prior to eligibility for buyout or acquisition. Bobby's wife is also on the deed, so he checked yes. Is the property that is being applied for buyout or acquisition in the process of foreclosure, or has it been foreclosed upon? If the applicant selects that the property is currently in the process of foreclosure, They may be eligible through a short sale. However, the subrecipient will have to provide assistance to the applicant to determine if the fair market value of the home is greater than the liens on the home. Does the damaged property have any liens? A lien is a right to keep possession of property belonging to another person until a debt owed by that person is discharged. Any liens that are on the house will be deducted from the sale value that will be given to the homeowner to pay off the liens. Bobby still has a mortgage on the home, so there is a mortgage lien on the home, so he checked yes. Are you current or in good standing with a payment plan on your property taxes? Any outstanding taxes will be deducted from the sale value that will be given to the homeowner to pay off the owed taxes. What is the current assessed value of the property? The current assessed value can be found at the tax assessor's website. If you are required to pay child support, are you current on your payments or in good standing with a payment plan? Child support will be verified through the Attorney General's office. If applicants are not current on child support payments, the monies owed will be deducted from the sale of the house to pay outstanding child support. If the applicant is not required to pay child support, they should write NA. The next part is for information on any additional properties that the applicant is applying for. For example, if the applicant has 2 eligible properties, they may apply for both, and they will only have to complete one application, but property-specific documentation will be required for all properties. Each column in this section has the same questions as above. Section 8 is where the applicant provides information about disaster-related assistance that has been previously received for this property. If no disaster-related assistance has been received for their property, the applicant should mark NA and proceed to Section 9. Additional pages can be attached if more space is needed. It is important for applicants to detail all disaster assistance received in order to calculate any duplication of benefit. Subrecipients must ensure that CDBG assistance does not duplicate the benefits of any other assistance provided for the same purpose or activity. The assistance information noted in the intake beneficiary application will assist the applicant and subrecipient in completing the duplication of benefits calculation form, which will be discussed in a future video, and determining if there is a duplication of benefit that will be reduced from the offer value on the property. Rows 1 through 4 include the common types of disaster assistance. The applicant will input the amount and date that the assistance was received. If, in Section 3, the applicant wrote that the property was impacted by more than one event, the applicant should input the monetary amounts and dates received for all events. The account number or policy number should be entered for any insurance proceeds received. Since Bobby has received assistance for the property in the past, he may have a duplication of benefit. Bobby input all assistance received in Section 8, and he will need to complete the duplication of benefit calculation form and the DOB eligible repairs calculation form to verify all eligible repairs made with assistance received and determine if there is a duplication of benefits. The next question is, have you received assistance from any federal program to repair your home prior to this event? Meaning, prior to the events listed on the application, has the applicant received any additional federal assistance for repair to the home? List the names of the programs for assistance. Has the applicant filed insurance claims on the property in the last 10 years? Has the applicant filed for increased cost compliance on the property in the last 10 years? If a property flooded more than 3 times, homeowners may have applied for increased cost compliance to elevate the home. Is the home substantially damaged? Substantially damaged means damage of any origin sustained by a structure, whereby the cost of restoring the structure to its pre-damaged condition would exceed or equal 50% of the market value of the structure before the disaster occurred. The applicant should answer if the home is currently substantially damaged. The answer is no if the home was substantially damaged and has been repaired. Section 9 is where the applicant completes various legal acknowledgments and certifications. The certifications include: in the first certification, the applicant acknowledges that this is a voluntary buyout or acquisition program, and that they do not need to participate and can withdraw at any time. It states, "I understand that this is a voluntary program, and the information provided above is collected to determine if I am eligible to receive assistance under the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program. I hereby certify that all the information provided herein is true and correct. I understand that providing false statements or information is grounds for termination of housing assistance and is punishable under federal law." By signing, the applicant is certifying that all information is true and correct, and if there are any false statements or information, it is grounds for termination and may be punishable under federal law. I acknowledge I am responsible for completing and returning all required documentation to the GLO designated representative within the time period stated by the GDR. If I fail to provide these documents in a timely manner, or if I fail to respond to any inquiries made by the GDR regarding my application for assistance, I may be disqualified from participating in the program, or I may have to reapply, and consequently, the original submission date is no longer effective. In this acknowledgement, the applicant acknowledges that they are the ones responsible for completing and returning all required documentation. If they fail to submit all required documentation by the deadline, they may be disqualified from the program. I understand that I am under no obligation to participate, and application does not guarantee any assistance or award of funding. The applicant certifies they understand that they are under no obligation to participate, and submission of the application does not guarantee any assistance or award of funding. The subrecipient will review the applicant for eligibility and prioritize based on funding ability according to the prioritization schedule in their housing guidelines to determine ability to participate in the program. I hereby provide and authorize the subrecipient or vendor and each of their respective employees, vendors, and contractors the right of entry in and onto the property described above for the purpose of performing all necessary activities to carry out the CDBG-DR program, including the assessment of damage and any work which I am claiming as an eligible use of prior assistance. I will confirm that the officer, official, or employee will present credentials, including photo identification, and state the reason for the site visit in order to request entry. This section is authorizing the subrecipient and their employees, vendors, and contractors a right of entry to enter in and onto the property to perform any necessary activities for the program. Next, this section also authorizes the subrecipient and GLO to obtain information about the applicant and the household that is pertinent to determining the applicant's eligibility for participation in the CDBG-DR program. The applicant states, "I authorize the entity to which I am applying for assistance to obtain information about me and my household that is pertinent to determining my eligibility for participation in the CDBG-DR program. I acknowledge that a photocopy of this form is as valid as the original, and the applicant has the right to review information received using this form, and The applicant has the right to a copy of information provided to the entity and to request correction of any information they believe to be inaccurate, and all adult household members will sign this form and cooperate with the eligibility verification process. And the applicant understands that the documents may become electronically permanent. Finally, there is a warning statement that the information in the application is correct and that the state and all its authorized representatives have a right to verify the information in the application. If an application contains knowingly and willingly false information, that the applicant may be considered guilty of a felony. It states, "Warning: by signing this application, the applicant authorizes the state or any of its duly authorized representatives to verify the information contained herein, including this section." Title 18, Section 1001 of the U.S. Code states that a person is guilty of a felony for knowingly and willingly making false or fraudulent statements to any department of the United States government. The applicant and co-applicant will need to sign and date confirming all the language that was certified in Section 9. The signatures can be digital or physical signatures. Section 10 is where the applicant authorizes the subrecipient to obtain information about the applicant and all members of the household 18 years or older to determine eligibility of the program. The subrecipient obtains this information to establish the level of benefits that the applicant is eligible to receive and to verify the application. Information received from an applicant as a result of verifying an applicant's eligibility may be released to the appropriate federal, state, or local agencies, or whenever relevant, to civil, criminal, or regulatory investigators and to prosecutors. Failure to provide any information may result in a delay or rejection of the applicant's eligible approval. Prior to providing the application to the prospective applicants, the subrecipient should complete the top part of Section 10, including information about the subrecipient and contract number. The applicant will fill out the name and property address that is being applied for. The list of all possible documentation that the subrecipient or GLO may inquire about are listed, and the applicant will need to initial to verify that they understand inquiries may be made about disaster assistance, income, occupancy preference, child support verification, dependent information, full-time student, disabled household member, and minor children. A warning statement is included reminding applicants that if they make a false statement or claim, the applicant may be subject to civil or criminal penalties. It states, "Warning: by signing this application, the applicant authorizes the state or any of its duly authorized representatives to verify the information contained herein, including this section. Any person who knowingly makes a false claim or statement to housing and urban development may be subject to civil or criminal penalties under 18 U.S.C. 287, 1001, and 31 U.S.C. 3729. Title 18, Section 1001 of the U.S. Code states that a person is guilty of a felony for knowingly and willingly making false or fraudulent statements to any department of the United States government. Both the applicant and, if applicable, the co-applicant will sign. The next section is for administrative use, and the applicant can skip the section because it will be filled out by the subrecipient. I will go over this section later in the video. Finally, the applicant will need to ensure they have attached all the applicable documents listed to ensure eligibility. The full list of required documents is on the application and should be checked off by the applicant once attached to the application. Required documentation includes the completed buyout and acquisition documentation. This is the completed intake beneficiary application that we are discussing in this video. All sections must be completed and signed. Driver's license, state-issued ID, or U.S. passport. Documents should be attached supporting adjusted gross income, such as tax returns within the last 2 years, signed and submitted. Or, if an applicant or household member over the age of 18 has not filed taxes within the past 2 years, they will need to provide the last 3 months of pay stubs or signed statements from the employer stating the wage and frequency of payment. Any benefits received, if applicable. Any unemployment income, if applicable. The current letter of benefits or printouts should include the benefit amount. Child support documentation, if applicable. Documentation should be attached to verify ownership, such as a deed in the applicant's name or fee simple title. If a deed or title cannot be provided, the case manager should work with the applicant to identify other methods of verifying ownership. Documentation should be attached supporting primary residency at the time of the storm, such as property tax records demonstrating homestead exemption for the property of application, or utility bill in the applicant's name at the time of the disaster event. If tax records or utility bills cannot be provided, the case manager should work with the applicant to identify other methods of verifying residency. The applicant will need to provide the most recent mortgage statement, if applicable, a statement of ownership documentation, if applicable, copies of receipts in the applicant's name for home repairs that have been made to the damaged property, if applicable. Award denial letters demonstrating the amount of duplication of benefits should be attached, such as FEMA award or denial letter, the Small Business Administration award or denial letter, private insurance letters, letter or announcement from an other award received for the repair or replacement of the damaged home, applicants should provide flood insurance declarations with proof of active policy if the property is located in a special flood hazard area. Note, the policy amount should be the lesser of the full insurable value of the structure as determined by the property insurer, or the maximum amount available for the structure under the National Flood Insurance Program or successor program. The full insurable value of the structure will be based upon the program's total project cost for the applicant. Manufactured homeowners should provide proof of structure ownership. See examples on the form. All applicants should provide proof of disaster damage, such as photos of the home with a written date and time stating when the pictures were taken. Once the applicant completes and submits the intake beneficiary application, the subrecipient will need to review for eligibility and complete the subrecipient sections of the application. At the beginning of the application, the subrecipient should complete the box using the information from the application. The subrecipient will list the event type, which is the disaster event that affected the property, such as Hurricane Harvey or the 2015 floods. The disaster event should match the program being applied for. Then, the subrecipient will input the year of the event and the date and time the application was received, the subrecipient's name, and the contract number with the GLO. Then, the subrecipient should complete the administrative use section on page 7 of the application. There, the subrecipient will identify the type of assistance requested. Once the application is completed, the subrecipient should proceed to review the application for eligibility. I hope you enjoyed this training. on the Intake Beneficiary application. If there are any additional questions during the completion of or eligibility review of the Intake Beneficiary application, subrecipients should reach out to their General Land Office Grant Manager. Additional videos will be forthcoming on the other required forms to review applicant eligibility.